Yeah, and when that happens, he's going to be absolutely impressive. And speaking of impressive acts, which transitions us very well into segment two, is I'd love to talk about Trent McDuffie. Not as my most impressive pick or like what I think was the most impressive thing, but I just wanted to touch on McDuffie really quick. I mean, he's a
Mm.
defensive back. Yes,
Yes.
he's a defensive back. Sorry. And he won one of the punt returner jobs. He goes out there. He goes 2 punt returns for 56-yard total. One was for 45. The other was 11. I mean, defensive stats weren't amazing, but I mean, 4 total tackles, 3 solo. But I think that, I mean, if it came down to just that one punt return that went back for 45 yards, I mean, that was an impressive feat in of itself. He's a sophomore. He's doing great things right now. He's absolutely proving that he deserves a starting spot on that roster, and he's showing it play after play after play. I just wanted to touch on him really quick. I thought that he did an absolutely amazing job.
Yeah, moving on with touching on him also, I think I either texted you or I texted someone during one of the plays. Oregon State was running a end around to their speedy little guy, and he had wide open, clear field, and Trent McDuffie just chases him, perfect angle, makes the tackle for like 2 or 3 yard gain. I mean, if Trent McDuffie had missed that tackle, I think that guy could have easily scored. Just showing Trent McDuffie's athleticism, his cross the field speed, and just tackling ability in open field. So yeah, he was extremely impressive.
Yeah, and then I think on the other side of the ball, something that was something that was also impressive on the other side of the ball for me was Adefuan. I mean, he did absolutely wonderfully. For another person coming in there and absolutely showcasing the fact that they deserve a starting spot is Adefuan. I mean, he's solidified himself as a core linebacker. He had 9 solo tackles, 1 assisted. He had a fumble recovery off of that amazing defensive play in the second half. And another surprising stat for Adefuan for something being really impressive coming out of this week was that he had 4 pass defenses this game, coming off of last season where he had 0. So I think.
You can
No,
continue.
go ahead.
Touching on him too, like he was named the defensive player of the game by the UW coaches, and touching on those pass deflections. But I love the last 3 plays for Oregon State on offense. He was involved in all 3 of them. He was involved in a pass deflection, and then another pass deflection, and then on the third one, Jebbia throws it and it hits the offensive lineman. But who's the offensive lineman blocking? He's blocking Ulofoshio. So he was involved extremely at the end of the game and kind of throughout the game. Really seemed like he was the only guy who was tackling Oregon State's running back Jefferson at times.
Speaking of running games, I thought our running game was also super impressive. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Sean McGrew came out of nowhere, blew me out of the water when he started running the ball. 9 attempts, 91 yards, 1 touchdown. Kamari Pleasant, I feel like, also did super well. 12 attempts, 61 yards, another touchdown on top of that. We did have 9 more runners who touched the balls, touched the ball for a total of 11 rushers. Coming up for 49 attempts, so almost 50, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
49 attempts for 267 total yards of rushing. I think having that many, I mean, just like receivers, when you can target 5, 6 different receivers 2, 3 plus times and get yards out of every single one of those plays, it worries a defense, because now when you see another guy come up behind the ball, another pair of fresh legs, another set of fresh legs, and you keep rotating that, by the fourth quarter, you have a core defense who is playing first quarter running backs who are fresh off the bench, have those fresh legs, and have been growing and growing and growing in their confidence and ability to push the ball downfield. I thought that was one of the most impressive things, and I think that's the most impressive thing for me coming out of this week.
Yeah, and Coach Lake touched on it kind of with McGrew. I mean, he had 9 carries, 91 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, Coach Lake said that they should have gotten him the ball more in the second half, and especially the fourth quarter, where I'm not sure if he had any touches really. A lot of his work was done in kind of the end of first quarter, second quarter, and I looked at McGrew like kind of a catalyst for this offense. I mean, the first drive, it was all Kamari Pleasant, and he was getting, kind of 2 yards a carry, 3 yards a carry. And then second drive, McGrew comes in. His first run is for 14 yards. His second run is then for 25 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he was just making big play after big play on the ground and really broke their offense wide open, I guess, in the run game. And the other running backs kind of followed suit, because after that, Pleasant started doing good. Richard Newton got in for a couple plays, had a few nice runs. And it was just a whole committee of running backs just making 5 yards a carry, basically. So yeah, the running backs definitely were one of the most impressive parts. And I think without that running game, it would have been a struggle maybe for the Huskies. I mean, they would have had to put a lot more on Dylan Morris. It was clear the running game was pounded into their minds as this is what we're going to do, and go out there and do it. Something else, you touched on Trent McDuffie. I was kind of really impressed just with the whole UW secondary. Going into the game, it was kind of the UW secondary was thought of as the clear best spot on the Huskies, on the defense, on the offense, just the best position group. And they showed that in the game. There was no disappointment really, no big plays by OSU. I'm not sure they had anything longer than 20 yards given up. And I mean, you look at Jebia's stats against Wazoo. He was 34 for 48, 330 yards and a touchdown. And then here he is against the Huskies, 11 for 24, 85 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So UW secondary really just clamped down on the receivers. There was never any missed assignments, never any wide open receivers. And that was what really impressed me a lot, just living up to the hype.
Yeah, and speaking of that run game really stepping up for them, I mean, you need that to be able to have your receivers work. I mean, as we both know. And I think that was one of the more disappointing things for me. Ty Jones and Rome Odunze both missing TD catches in the end zone.
Before you get too far, I have one more thing that I was impressed with. Before we get into the disappointment, I gotta give a shout out to Zion Chupulo Fitu, ZTF. He outside linebacker. He wasn't supposed to be a starter, but Latu was injured, so ZTF got the start. And all he did was go in there, have 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and just made an impact. So you got to give him some love. He played great, played with a high motor, and I hope to see him keep getting those snaps and keep earning reps even when Latu is back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he showed out. He showed he deserved a spot, and I think he's earned it. Mm-hmm. Back to the disappointing parts, though. Ty and Rome, both of them should have another touchdown on their stat sheet. Dylan Morris should have 2, 1 from each of them. And that was the most disappointing thing for me, seeing receivers that not only you and I have touted so much in the past few weeks, but that other people like pollers and other websites and groups and publications have been just touting our receiver core and saying them, the secondary, a few other key positions and players, like those are the things we have to look forward to, is that talent and that depth. And then just seeing like almost careless, like aloof or just unnecessary mistakes happen. I mean, across the entire team was super disappointing. I mean, you never want to use it as an excuse. So like, yeah, it was rainy, it was cold, it's hard to catch in those conditions. But I mean, you're playing college football. Like you're expected to make that catch. I mean, back in high school, you always heard the saying, like, if you can touch the ball, you should be able to catch it. They touched the ball in the end zone twice and both of them dropped it. Like that's just not supposed to happen. That's 6 points, easy money when it touches both of your hands. So that was really disappointing, but I'm not worried about, and that's one thing I worried about it, and that's one thing I wanted to touch before I ended it back for what you found disappointing from the week, is because these guys are just too smart. They're too talented to let one semi-bad game and one TD drop like ruin their confidence and their mental. I mean, we also have a crazy good depth at that position as well, which allows players like this, I think, to occasionally have that bad snap or bad game. And you can just keep rotating them out. So I'm not worried about a receiver position. It was disappointing to see that be their turnout for the first game, but I'm not worried about it. What do you think?
Well, first, before I get into anything, I hate that statement. I've always hated if it touches your hands, you're supposed to catch the ball. It just doesn't work like that.
Touch it. It's in your area of catching.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was disappointed in the drops, but I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. But moving on, just looking at something I was really disappointed in was on the defense, and it was the run defense. You look at it kind of like, so they were missing 2 key guys on the front 4 with Latu, and then Tuli Gasanoa also missed this game, unsure of what these injuries are, as Jimmy Lake doesn't really talk about them. Hopefully they're back by next week, because Tuli Gasanoa is a key guy up front, big guy, 305 pounds. He was really looking to replace Onzarike and take that role over. But you look at so going into the game, Oregon State was thought of as their running team. Jebbia can't really throw very accurately. He's not the best passer, and Jefferson's going to carry him. And so you're like, okay, just load the box. Just force Jebbia to throw the ball. That didn't happen. I mean, Jefferson ran 23 times for 133 yards. At times, it seemed like there were just massive gaps that the Oregon State O-line was given the running back, and he just could run all over him. I will, though, give the UW defense props. I mean, late in the game, key time, 3rd and 1 on like the 5-yard line, they stuffed them. 4th and 1 on the 5-yard line, they stuffed them. So I'll give them a bit of props for that, but overall, I expected more from the Husky defensive line.
I don't know. It wasn't disappointing. It was almost like expected. Like, we knew the inside linebacker group was going to be weak. We knew our defensive line wasn't as strong as we'd have wanted. We knew our secondary was great, so we weren't worried about that. So I agree it was a disappointing thing to witness, but I don't think it was that disappointing. I mean, I don't know. Almost like acceptance is more of how I feel like, yeah, that was going to happen. Like, I saw that one coming. Heading into segment 3,
well,
though.
I got